welcome to my class. Today in this topic we will be discussing about the biological classification. So biological classification is basically a scientific procedure, right? A scientific procedure that involves the arrangement of organism in a hierarchical series. What is hierarchical series? Last life class I have given you, right? Hierarchical series, there are 7 series, right? Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So in biological classification, we classify or we arrange organism into the 7 hierarchical series on the basis of their similarities and dissimilarities, right? So why it is important to classify living organisms, so that we can go for a systematic study. It is easy to know about the living organism, right? And the most important thing is biological classification. When we classify living organisms, we have to take or we have to consider so many characteristics of living organism, so that we can classify it into a proper group or proper on proper characteristics, right? So that is all about biological classification. So basically, what is biological classification? It is an arrangement or a procedure that involves the arrangement of organism or grouping of organism into 7 hierarchical series based on their similarities and dissimilarities, right? So that is what we understand by biological classification. Now, the first person who actually started this classification concept was your Aristotle. Aristotle was the first scientist. This is very important. You can get question in 1 marks. Who is the first scientist to classify living organism? Make sure that is Aristotle. Aristotle was the first scientist who classified the living organism into two categories. What? Kingdom Plantae and Animalia, right? So what he done, Aristotle, he classified living organism into 2 classes. What are the 2 classes? That is your Kingdom Plantae and Animalia. In the Plantae, it included basically shrubs, trees and herbs. And in the Animalia, it is again classified on the basis of presence of red blood cell. All the organisms which are having red blood cells, they are categorized into one group, and the organisms which do not have red blood cells, they are again characterized into the another group, right? So this is the basis of the classification which was done by Aristotle. So how he classified? He basically what he did, he classified living organism into 2 groups, that is your plants and animals. So in the plants, it includes herbs, trees and shrubs, and in the animals, he divided the organism by checking the presence of red blood cells, right? If red blood cells are present, they are categorized into one group, and if red blood cells are absent, they are categorized into another group, right? So that is what is your Aristotle, what he did. And he was the first scientist to attempt the classification for the very first time. So now why there is a need for classifying living organism? This is because the study of 1 or 2 organism is not sufficient to know the essential features of the group. All kinds of organisms do not occur in one locality. Classification helps in knowing the relationship between the different group of organisms. It helps in knowing the evolutionary relationship between organisms, how organism starts evolving, right? So these all, it helps in understanding the evolutionary relationship, how organism evolves. So by classifying organism into groups, we can study the detail, or the conceptually we can study about that organism. Clear? Okay. Next, 2 kingdom classification. So the scientist who came out with the 2 kingdom classification was your Carolus Linnaeus. Carolus Linnaeus gave 2 kingdom classification. He divided living organism into 2 kingdoms, Kingdom Plantae and Kingdom Animalia. So in the year 1758, Carolus Linnaeus, he is also known as the father of taxonomy. Carolus Linnaeus, also known as father of taxonomy, divided all the living organisms into two kingdoms, Plantae and Animalia. Plantae includes all the plants, right? And Animalia includes what? All animals. You can say it includes all animals. Plants, we know they are autotrophic. They can synthesize their own food. And animals, we know they are heterotrophic. That means they are dependent on other organisms for food. They are dependent on autotrophs for food. They cannot synthesize their own food, right? So that is what the Carolus Linnaeus, what he did, he classified organism into two kingdoms, kingdom Plantae and kingdom Animalia, right? Coming to the salient features of the kingdom Plantae. Plantae have a cell wall. Means if this is a cell, say this is a cell, right? So the Plantae, Animalia do not have cell wall. So they have one more outer covering, right? And that outer covering we call it cell wall, right? This is what we call cell wall. And the other part we call it cell membrane. So Plantae are having a cell wall. Next, autotrophic mode of nutrition. They are having autotrophic. You can see this word is a combination of two words, that is auto plus trophic. Auto means what? Self. Trophic means nutrition. So these are basically, these are the plants which actually make their own food. So we call them autotrophic. And they also, while preparing food, they divide food into two categories. One, they will be utilizing that food for energy. Another, they store that food. And the food is stored in the form of starch. A big central vacuole is present. So inside the cell there will be one circular structure, that is what we call vacuole. And what is the function of vacuole? Everything we will deal in animal, when we will deal these parts when we study the plant cell and animal cell in our upcoming classes. Now in plants, they do not have any excretory organ, nerve system or sense organ and muscular system. Plants also do not show locomotion. That means no movement is there in the plants. Plantae absorbs inorganic nutrients from outside. Obviously, plants take what? Carbon dioxide from air. For photosynthesis, carbon dioxide, water and sunlight. It needs for photosynthesis, right? But if we talk about nutrients, how plants get their nutrients? By photosynthesis, they will prepare their food. But from the soil, they are taking what? From the soil, they are taking water and some materials like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen from the soil, right? So this is why it is saying plant absorbs inorganic nutrients from outside. They experience unlimited growth but have well-defined growing point. That means at the back of this, there is a growing point. So that means what? The plant have a unlimited growth. The plant can grow unlimitedly, they can grow, but they have a well-defined growing point. I mean, they are having a limit of the growing. They can grow well. Fine. Their response to external stimuli is slow. Next, coming to animal kingdom, significant features of the kingdom Animalia. If you see, cell wall is absent. So cell wall is absent. That means cell somewhat looks like this. Only one membrane. That is what we call cell membrane. There will be no cell wall, right? There are no inorganic crystals present in their cell. Central vacuole is absent. So vacuole is also absent. Growth is limited and well-defined growing points are not present. So growth is limited. They cannot grow beyond the limit. Heterotrophic mode of nutrition. Again, heterotrophic comes from two words. Hetero plus trophic. Trophic means again nutrition, right? Trophic means again nutrition. Hetero means different source. So these are organisms which are dependent on nutrition, which are dependent on other sources for nutrition. Or you can say they are dependent on autotrophs for food. So that is why we call them heterotrophic mode of nutrition. And this animal cell shows a very quick response to external stimuli. shows quick response to external stimuli. The muscular system is present. You can see yourself also, right? You have an excretory system, you have a nerve system, you have a muscular system, right? So all the animals are having circulatory system, excretory system, nerve system, etc. But which is absent in case of plants. Locomotion is present, movement is present, excretory organs, nerve system and sense organs are present. Reserve food. In case of plants, we have seen the reserve food is known as starch. But in case of animal, it is your glycogen is the reserve food. So that is all about your two kingdom classification. Next, we will move to our three kingdom classification. So if we talk about three kingdom classification, it was given by Ernst Haeckel. The scientist who proposed this three kingdom classification was your Ernst Haeckel. What he have done, he divided the living organism into three kingdom. What are the three kingdom? Kingdom Plantae, Animalia and Protista. We will see now. See here. In the year 1866, Ernst Haeckel classified living organism into three kingdom: Plantae, Protista and Animalia. The new kingdom, Protista, this new kingdom, this is Protista, right? So what this Protista included? This included all those organisms which lack the capability of tissue differentiation. That means, see, apart from plants and animals, the environment is having so many living organisms, right? For example, say algae, fungi. So these all are not exactly plants, they are not animals. They are like, so they have to be grouped into another kingdom. So the scientists proposed another kingdom called Protista, which included algae, fungi, protozoa, right? So later kingdom Protista was reserved only for the unicellular organism. So what is unicellular? Uni means single. Cellular means cell. So these basically are the organisms which are made of single cell. But if we talk about multicellular, multi means what? Many, right? Many. Cellular comes from the cell. So this includes the organisms which are composed of many cells. For example, your human being, we have your blood cells, we have your nerve cells, we have so many different cells. But in case of unicellular, this includes what? Unicellular. It includes only one cell. Clear? So what are the limitations of three kingdom classification? Limitation was that there was no separation of prokaryotes and eukaryotes. What is prokaryotes? What is eukaryotes? I think you know. If you don't know, I will explain it. Prokaryotes means what? Suppose this is a cell. This is one cell, this is another cell. In prokaryotes, the nucleus is not covered by nuclear membrane. Prokaryotes means, see here, pro plus karyotes come from again two words. Pro means primitive. Pro means primitive. And karyotes come from your karyon. Karyon means your nucleus, right? So these are those organisms which are having a primitive nucleus. Primitive nucleus. Primitive nucleus means what? The nucleus is not covered by nuclear membrane. It is what? Excuse me. Nucleus is not covered by nuclear membrane. Clear? But in case of eukaryotic cell, you see this is a nucleus. Suppose this nucleus is covered by a definite membrane. Let me draw the membrane here so that you can see it very nicely. So you see this is a membrane, right? So you can see the nucleus, this is nucleus. This is what? This is your nucleus. And this nucleus is surrounded by a covering, yellow color. We call it nuclear membrane. So here eukaryotes again comes from two words, eu plus karyon. U means what? U comes from the word true. and karyon is basically your nucleus. So basically eukaryotes is what it includes. It includes all those organisms which have a true nucleus. So what is true nucleus? True nucleus means the cell in which the nuclear membrane is present, or the nuclear membrane surrounds the nucleus. When nuclear membrane is present and is surrounding the nucleus, we call those cells eukaryotes. Clear? So here you see cell number 1 and cell number 2. In cell 1, the nucleus, the nuclear material is lying naked in the cell. There is no covering. So we call these cells prokaryotes. But in case of eukaryotes, you can see the nuclear material is covered by a separate membrane. And that membrane, we called it what? We called it nuclear membrane. Clear? So that is all about your prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So this three kingdom classification, it do not separate prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Let me give you the example of prokaryotes. It includes your bacteria. And eukaryotes include plant cell, animal cell, right? So these are eukaryotes. We have this cell, eukaryotes. Correct? Okay. And one more thing, the limitation is in case of Protista, initially both unicellular and multicellular organisms are classified into Protista. So this is also your one of the demerit or limitation of the three kingdom classification. Next came your four kingdom classification. The four kingdom classification was given up by Copeland. What he did, he basically classified living organism into four kingdoms. Kingdom Plantae, Kingdom Animalia, Kingdom Protista, Kingdom Monere. Plantae Animalia initially he added one more kingdom, that is your Kingdom Monere. Fine. Now we will see what is Monere. So in addition to Protista, Plantae and Animalia, the fourth kingdom classification includes Monere. What basically Kingdom Monere includes? It includes all the prokaryotic organism. Prokaryotic organism, basically your bacteria, right? So basically what it includes your bacteria. So the study with microscope made it clear that bacteria and related organisms have a different nuclear structure as compared to others. So they are termed as prokaryotes because they do not have a nuclear membrane surrounding the nucleus, right? So this needs to be grouped into one more kingdom, and the Copeland named that kingdom as Monere, which includes all the prokaryotic organism. Fine. So that is what we call Kingdom Monere. It includes all prokaryotic organism. Next, five kingdom classification. This five kingdom classification was done by Archaebacteria. And this five kingdom classification is the most accepted form of classification. Most accepted form of classification is your five kingdom classification, and it was proposed by Archaebacteria. So he basically what he had done is he classified the living organisms into five kingdoms. That is your Monere, Protista, fungi, Plantae, Animalia. So the extra kingdom he added is your fungi. And this kingdom classification we will be studying in more detail in our upcoming classes. In today's class, this is the overview how living organisms are classified step by step. But most accepted form is this five kingdom classifications. We will be studying it in more detail in our upcoming classes. Now, in the year 1969, this five kingdom classifications came into existence. Archaebacteria proposed this system. He created a separate group for fungi. Now, you all know what is fungi, right? So, what are the criteria he considered? The criteria for classification were cell structure. The fungi are your eukaryotic organism, but they are dependent on others for food. Eukaryotic, heterotrophic. So mode of nutrition is one. Mode of nutrition is your heterotrophic. That means fungi cannot synthesize their own food. They are dependent on other organisms for food. Reproduction. It includes both sexual and asexual reproduction. Thallus organizations and phylogenetic relationships. So these are the categories the scientists used or considered while classifying the kingdom fungi, organism into kingdom fungi. Next, sixth kingdom classification. Another scientist called Carl Woese, a professor in the Department of Microbiology, University of Illinois, came up with the sixth kingdom classification. So in this, let me tell you what actually Carl Woese have done. Carl Woese, he divided kingdom Monera. He divided kingdom Monera into two other kingdoms. That is your Archaebacteria and Eubacteria. And one more king, Monera, he divided into Archaea and Eubacteria, and rest all other organisms he put it in the kingdom Eukarya. Clear? That's why this classification is also known as three-domain system. What are the three domain? One domain is your Archaea, second domain is your Eubacteria, and third domain is your Eukarya. So basically what this Carl Woese have done, he divided the kingdom Monera into two kingdoms, that is your Archaebacteria and Eubacteria, and rest all other Plantae, Animalia, Protista, he put it under Eukarya. So this is one domain, this is second domain, and this is your third domain. Clear? So that is what is your sixth kingdom classification. So Archaea, basically what Archaea includes, it includes your prokaryotic organisms. These have a monolayer core of lipids. So Archaea basically includes your prokaryotic organism, yes, and these have a monolayer core of lipids in the cell membrane and distinct nucleotides in their 16S rRNA. So Archaea is having what? It is a prokaryotic organism. Prokaryotic, they do not have nuclear membrane. Then they are having a 16S rRNA. So RNA is your genetic material, right? 16S rRNA is a type of RNA that is used for what? That is, it is a very conserved sequence. This 16S rRNA is a very conserved sequence. It is seen in Archaea, right? And it is a type of RNA. It is a form of RNA, right? It contains a single kingdom called Archaebacteria. So Archaebacteria actually includes what? It includes those organisms which can survive in extreme conditions. Extreme conditions means what? They are also known as extremophiles. They are also known as extremophiles. Let me show you what are the extreme conditions. Say any organisms which can survive in high acidic region. In high acid region, then we call it acidophilic bacteria. Acidophilic bacteria. Any organisms which can survive in high salt, we call it halophile. High alkaline region, then we call it alkalophile. Clear? So these are the extreme conditions. High pressure region, we call it barophiles. So these are basically all the organisms which are surviving in the extreme condition comes or are put under Archaebacteria. Next, bacteria. The bacteria also includes your prokaryotes, but they lack membrane and they are surviving in your normal temperature, not in the extreme conditions. In the normal temperature, normal environment, they are surviving. So this also includes, that is also your prokaryotes. Clear? Next kingdom, Eubacteria. The member of this kingdom have peptidoglycan cell wall, naked DNA in coil form, or genetic material. Genetic material is naked, right? So genetic material is basically your either DNA or RNA. In some organism it is DNA, in some organism it is RNA. So when the nuclear membrane is not present, not surrounding this genetic material, we call it prokaryote. So this is basically a prokaryotic organism, right? So that is what is your kingdom Eubacteria. It includes mycoplasma, actinomycetes, rickettsia, spirochetes, cyanobacteria. This we will study in more detail in our upcoming classes. Yes, this is your eukarya. So eukarya contains what? It contains all the eukaryotes. Basically eukarya includes all the four other kingdoms like Protista, Plantae, Animalia and fungi, right? And this is all about today's class. We have seen this six kingdom classification, basically also known as three domain system. What is three domain? Three domain because he has classified organism into three domains: Archaebacteria, Eubacteria and Eukarya, right? That's all. So that's all for today's class. Next class we will study in detail about the five kingdom classification, and we will go through each kingdom in detail. We will go through in detail about each kingdom. And guys, if you have any doubts, please let me know. Feel free to ask. Thank you so much students for joining the class. We'll meet up in the next class.